A young man was checking into an old hotel. Approaching the reception desk, he received the key to his room. The receptionist, a calm but slightly tense young woman, handed him the key and warned him. On the way to your room, there will be a door without a number. It is always locked. Remember, do not enter it. What's more, don't even look inside. Never. Under any circumstances. The young man promised to follow the instructions. He walked past the mysterious door, trying not to look at it, and settled into his room. But as night fell, his curiosity got the better of him. What was behind that strange door? The next morning, he couldn't resist. Walking down the hallway, he approached the door. It was, as he had been told, tightly closed. He leaned over and peered through the keyhole. A cold draft hit his face. Through the crack, he saw a number almost identical to his own. A woman was sitting in the corner. Her skin was frighteningly white, and her face was turned away. She sat motionless, like a statue. The guy stared for a moment, but feeling uneasy, he walked away. He was about to knock, but at the last moment he changed his mind and went back to his room. The next day, he approached the door again. He leaned toward the keyhole, but now he saw nothing but a solid red color. Everything was as if it had been flooded with blood. They must have covered the crack with something so I couldn't peek, he thought. Puzzled, he went to the reception desk and told the girl about his curiosity. She sighed heavily. "Did you look after all?" she asked. He nodded. The girl paused, then said, "Okay. Since you already know, I'll tell you. Many years ago, a tragedy occurred in this room. A husband killed his wife. Since then, her spirit has remained there. But they were unusual people. Their bodies were completely white, and their eyes were bright red." A chill ran down the young man's spine. He suddenly realized the red thing he had seen was an eye, and someone was already looking right at him. Have you ever experimented with mirrors? If not, it's better not to try. Especially if you're not very strong-nerved and not very well-versed in all kinds of mystical nonsense. Not only will you throw bricks around, you'll build a house out of them. I foolishly tried it once in my early youth. I did everything right. I found 3 large mirrors, several candles, and something else. I don't remember what. I think the whole thing was called a soul trap in the book I read about it. But the manual didn't specify whose souls were being trapped or who the trap was for. Well, I didn't care. I wasn't afraid of anything. I was home alone, waited until it was a little past midnight, and set up all this stuff around me. Then I started looking into my reflection. You know how if you stare into the abyss long enough, it starts staring back at you? Well, it seems that's the harsh truth. At first I didn't see anything unusual, just my reflection, the surroundings that weren't obscured by mirrors, and the candles burning with an even flame. Then the rest of the room gradually melted away, and I lost track of where I was and how much time had passed, because even the wall clock had stopped ticking. And I sat there, staring at my own features, at my eyes. I only caught a glimpse of the moment when the candlelight flickered as if blown by the wind. This was in a closed room where there couldn't have been a draft. Then a slight chill came from the mirrors, and it felt like a cool breeze was swirling around the entire display. I sat there staring, but I was already very unhappy that I had started all this. But I couldn't get up, even though my body felt fine, and nothing seemed to be wrong. I just couldn't take my eyes off the central mirror. Now the reflection was looking at me. And damn it, it wasn't me. I don't know what was going on there, what optical wonders, but the mirror me had very little in common with me. I felt that there, just a few pitiful millimeters of glass separating us, lurked a uniform nightmare, which out of pure mockery had taken on my form. From such distant places, where no sane person would ever venture, because there are easier ways to kill yourself. And this nightmare slowly, at first barely noticeable, then more and more clearly and brazenly, took on a new form and began to grin at me. And I wasn't in the mood to laugh. I couldn't even turn away. It was as if someone had grabbed my head with steel hands. All I could do was turn my eyes slightly to the side, away from the center. I wish I hadn't done that. In the neighboring mirrors, I saw reflections of figures that vaguely resembled me, and I suddenly realized that I had played my last card. There was not a sound around me. My heart, which should have been pounding with fear, was beating laboriously, as if reluctantly, and my breathing, which should also have been rapid and intermittent, was almost imperceptible, as if I was breathing once every 10 seconds. I had the feeling that the whole company was sucking the life out of me, drop by drop. I could barely force my body to breathe, and my reflections seemed to be gathering strength, becoming more voluminous, more natural. And in the mirrors behind them, faint gray glints flashed the shadows of some kind of paws, twisted figures, no less repulsive, but much weaker than the trio that had recently been nothing more than my reflection in the stupid mirrors. I'm afraid to guess how it would have ended if a dog hadn't suddenly howled outside the window. Not just howled, but howled like only the wildest, most animalistic terror can. All I could do was push the central mirror. I will never forget that inhuman, monstrous face, contorted with hatred, staring at me fiercely from the mirror as it slowly fell to the floor. There was a crash, and then shards of glass. I came to my senses and felt completely limp, almost passing out, as if I had been severely beaten. Only one thought pulsed in my head: how I would explain the broken mirror to my parents. Almost 10 years have passed since then, and I have tried hard to forget this story, but even now I try not to linger near mirrors unnecessarily. This happened 5 years ago when I was living in an apartment in the city. I've always been a night owl, so when my roommate went to bed, I often went out for a walk to pass the time. Walking around at night, I never had any reason to be afraid, but one evening everything changed. It was a Wednesday night, around 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was walking through a park that was quite far from my apartment. It was a quiet night and there were almost no cars. The streets were completely empty. I turned into a small alley that led back to my apartment. That's when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, I saw the silhouette of a man. He was dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he ended each movement with a step forward. You could say that this dance was similar to walking, and he was moving towards me. Deciding that he was just drunk, I moved to the edge of the sidewalk to give him enough room to pass. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he moved. He was very tall and lanky, and wore an old, worn suit. He danced and came closer and closer until I could see his face. His head was tilted back slightly, and his eyes were wide open, staring at the sky. His mouth was twisted into a big, wide smile, almost like a cartoon character. His wild expression and terrifying smile made me feel uneasy, so I decided to cross the street before he got any closer. I averted my gaze as I crossed the street. When I reached the other side, I looked back and froze. He had stopped dancing and was standing on the same sidewalk as me, facing me. His face was turned toward me, but his eyes were still fixed upward. The ugly smile was still playing on his lips. I was very alarmed. I moved forward again, glancing nervously at the man. He didn't move. When I was about half a block away from him, I looked back. The street behind me was completely empty. Still nervous, I looked ahead again and saw that the man had disappeared. For a brief moment, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street again and was now crouching slightly. I couldn't tell for sure because of the distance and the shadows, but I was certain his face was turned toward me. I had only looked away for 10 seconds at most, so it was clear he was moving very fast. I was so shocked that I just stood there for a while, staring at him. And then he started moving toward me again, taking giant steps, with his toes pointed forward, like some cartoon character sneaking up on his prey. Only he was moving very, very fast. I wish I could say that at that moment I ran away, or got a pepper spray, or my cell phone, or did anything at all, but I didn't do anything. I just stood there, frozen, while the smiling man crept up to me. And then he stopped again, about a car's length away from me. Still smiling his creepy smile, still looking up at the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. I wanted to ask in an angry tone, "What the hell do you want?" But all that came out was a pathetic squeak. What the hell? Maybe people can't smell fear, but they can hear it in your voice. I heard the fear in my voice, and it scared me even more. But he didn't react to my words at all. He just stood there and smiled. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, he turned very slowly and began to dance away. Not wanting to turn my back on him again, I watched until he was far enough away and almost out of sight. And then it dawned on me. He wasn't moving away or dancing anymore. I watched in horror as his figure grew larger and larger. He was coming back toward me, but this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I reached another street, better lit and with fewer cars. Looking back, I didn't see him anywhere. I looked over my shoulder the rest of the way home, constantly expecting to see him following me and smiling that creepy smile, but he never appeared. After that night, I never went out for a night walk again. There was something about his face that still haunts me to this day. He wasn't drunk, he didn't look crazy, and it was very, very scary.